Cleveland with Boundary Stone, and we're here to provide you with resources to understand and engage with your world. Today, I don't know if you're like me. Sometimes I'll read through Scripture and it seems to be a bit elusive to me. I'm not sure I quite understand, and usually it's because I don't understand the context. I don't understand some of the surrounding circumstances and the situation. I was reading an article by Joel McDurmon, and really an excellent piece. And the title of his article, he goes on to explain, he's looking at this whole issue of render unto Caesar what is Caesar's, that Jesus had stated. And I think sometimes when we see that, we get it wrong. I in fact, for a long time, until I read this article, I really didn't understand the context so much. But Mr. McDurmon does really an excellent job of kind of walking you through this. The occasion of this is Jesus has come to Jerusalem. He's on his way to the cross. And in the process, when he first gets to Jerusalem, he goes into the temple and he overturns the money changers' tables. And the Pharisees come to him and they ask him, by what authority is he doing this? And instead of answering directly, he said, well, wait a second, let me ask you guys a question. John the Baptist, was he of God or was he of man? And so the scribes and the Pharisees got together and said, well, now if we say he's of God, then Jesus will say, why didn't you listen to him? Because he pointed to me as the Christ. And that's what authority I'm doing this. But if we say of man, the people will rebel against us because they figure that John was a prophet. So they didn't answer. They said, we don't know. So Jesus said, well, I'm not going to tell you. I'm not going to answer your question. Well, later, what they're trying to do when they come to ask Jesus about whether it's lawful to pay taxes to Caesar, they're trying to use the same technique and trap him. And so they come to him and they pull out a Roman denarius and they hand it to, or he says, they ask him the question, is it lawful to pay taxes to Caesar? And he says, you have a coin? And they reach in their pockets. And yeah, here's one. Here's a Roman denarius. And Jesus says, now, whose face is on there? And they go, well, Caesar. And then they say, well, what's the inscription? Well, here was the inscription on the coin. On one side it said, Tiberius Caesar, august son of the august God. On the flip side, it had in Latin, high priest. Now, this was blasphemous. And that they would be carrying these coins in the temple was also blasphemous. Now, you had to pay your tax, your Roman tax, with the denarius. It was a head tax. But if you're in the temple, because that coin itself was blasphemous, you needed to come into the temple and with whatever temple tax or tithe or whatever, you needed to pay with the shekel. So what the scribes and the Pharisees had done is they'd set up their money-changing business so people could come in, because they did business in the Roman coinage, but they needed to exchange their money in order to engage in worship. And the scribes and the Pharisees were making themselves rich off this process of changing the money out. The fact that they were in there with pockets full of Roman denarii was blasphemous. It was an offense against God. And so, literally, when Jesus says, render unto Caesar, he says, well, it's his coin, give it back to him. Give it to him. It's his. But render unto God what's God's. Now, what is God's? Good question. Everything. Caesar is God's. He is as much subject to Jesus as anyone else. And when he violates the law of God, he's violated the supreme authority. And he's presumptuously assumed for himself a position he does not hold. And, that's really what Jesus is getting at there. So I think that's really an excellent article. I hope that's been helpful to you in thinking through some of these things. I'll talk to you next time. Dr. Paul Cleveland with Boundary Stone. Check out our website, boundarystone.org.